Focusing on the Champions League, lads, we're going to ask you, who are the Champions League favourites so far after 2 rounds of games now? We've seen a lot from some of the giants across Europe. Which clubs are the favourites? So let's focus on the Premier League teams first. Maybe look at which team looks best suited to go the furthest out of them. Nick, which team have made the best starts to the group stages? Because there's one clear contender here, but I'm intrigued to get your thought.
Yeah, thanks for coming to me first, because I get to use the obvious one and I'm not going to defer. It's Man City. Honestly, the Dortmund is not a bad team, and Dortmund got in front and Dortmund fell apart pretty quickly because there's a literal monster playing center forward for a team. We spent all of last year lamenting that City couldn't get, well, not lamenting that Harry Kane was still on Spurs, but lamenting what would City look like if they would have gotten Harry Kane. And now it's like, what if they got Harry Kane, but Harry Kane was indestructible? And it's a special team. That goal, which we've now seen a few times out of Haaland, from acrobatic in tight angles, jumping to use his feet when most people would use their heads. Holy cow. And to throw it out, if you were a Dortmund fan, you're always wondering, I wonder what it would look like with this guy if he was getting exquisite service. That's an outside of the boot. The ball is stupid. Everything about that goal is amazing. And I don't know how you look away from Man City right now.
Well, I think Haaland, right, in the Premier League and Champions League, he is that missing piece of the jigsaw we all thought he would be. I mean, we didn't think it would go this well, right? 10 goals in his first 6 Premier League games. But yeah, every time you're screaming at the TV, if only they had a number 9 to finish off all these chances in the 6-yard box. They have one now, and he's doing that and then pulling out ridiculous goals like that, Nick, to win games against his former team. So City, 2 wins from 2, flying. Andy, when we look elsewhere with the Premier League teams, obviously Chelsea drew at home in Graham Potter's debut against Salzburg. A little bit disappointing. They played much better, though. And after that defeat against Dynamo Zagreb away, which was the end for Thomas Tuchel, that was a step forward, I think, for Chelsea, right? So they're doing okay, but it's a tough group with AC Milan in there as well.
Yeah, the word I would use to describe the performance would be positive, and not just because it was a solid performance or an improved performance, but I think the way that they played was rather positive and very, very different to what we saw certainly in the final days. But for the majority of Thomas Tuchel's time at Chelsea, it wasn't negative by any means, but it was slower, methodical plotting, I think was the word that I used in the recap of that game against Salzburg, where it just never seemed to be going anywhere. It just existed on the field as it was. And with Potter, we know what to expect from him from his time at Brighton. It's all about possession. It's a quick possession. It's a lot of combination play in the center of the field. And I think if you take that very simple idea and you apply it to a team that's got a lot higher quality players, Chelsea compared to Brighton, I think you're going to see some pretty quick results from Potter. But what I think will be missing and will take some time will be that final third. Brighton created tons of chances, similar to City, couldn't put them away. We didn't see a ton of chance creation from Chelsea in this game. Raheem Sterling scored from just a wonderful individual moment, although you could see the wingbacks getting forward, or the fullbacks getting forward and crossing the ball all the way across the field. And so some of those similar things that we will eventually see once Potter's put his stamp on this team, it's just going to take a little bit of time, I think, for them.
Yeah, Potter is just conjuring up a bit of magic there, right? Just taking his time to do that. Sorry, I couldn't get past that one. So yeah, Chelsea will probably be in better shape, like we said. I think he's making some good tactical tweaks early. They'll get better and better. We're all a huge Graham Potter fan on this show. Lovely bloke and just a very good tactician. And I think if he's given the time at Chelsea, they're going to be really good to watch and a fun team to watch with all these young players in the years ahead. Nick, when we look at the other teams, Liverpool got past Ajax, created a lot of chances. It looked like we were going to draw that game, but Big Joel Matip popped up with the late winner. They deserved that, right? I think that was a big moment for Jurgen Klopp's side, given some of the recent results, the displays, the defeat at Napoli in the opening game. And that'll give them a lot of confidence going into 2 games against Glasgow Rangers, who look a bit all over the place in Europe so far.
Yeah, I look at Liverpool, and I really do think they're going to come around. Whether or not they've dug themselves too far of a hole in terms of the Premier League is obviously a discussion for another day. But I look at them and it's still dominant. Like, even with you mentioned Chelsea, right? in that game, they draw 1-1, but they out-attempt their opponent 17-4. A lot of the Liverpool games have been like that. A lot of watching Liverpool has been, they're just not finishing their chances. They're not making it happen. We haven't, and Andy talks about the final third for Chelsea, and when these players have to come together in a new way, we forget that this is a team learning how to exist without Sadio Mane. This is a team that's still going to integrate Darwin Nunez, who I have a lot of faith in. So I do believe that it's just a matter of them coming together. I think they'll probably be more of a Champions League threat than they will be a Premier League threat this year.
Yeah, that's good. That's a good point. And it certainly looked like that against Ajax for sure. They kind of come back to their old selves and were dominant. And yeah, it's going to be interesting, though. There's still a few defensive cracks there, I think, for Liverpool to try and plug and try and maybe adapt the way they play. Because the goal they conceded, again, came in behind Alexander-Arnold, Van Dijk. Kind of gave a little bit too much space and time, but heck of a finish. And Ajax are a fun team to watch as well. So I think they'll go through with them. Potentially in that group, it would be between them and Napoli, who have started really, really well. So it's going to be interesting, that group for sure, with those three in it. And Andy, Tottenham Hotspur, what happened to them? Away at Sporting Lisbon, 2 late goals for Lisbon. Antonio Conte struggled generally in the Champions League during his time as a manager. Really weird to figure that out. He's been so dominant in domestic leagues. But for Spurs, it was a case of just sitting back and maybe thinking, a draw is okay away at Sporting Lisbon. But they didn't get it. Concerned about that? Or was it just one of those things where they got caught cold late in the game? 2 great goals, and that was pretty much it.
Yeah, I think that's about it. Like, this game played out exactly the same as every Spurs game this season, save for one, the opening day victory over Southampton, where it was much more comfortable. This has been every single game where it's 60, 70, 80 minutes, and it's still in question. And if you look at the squads and the expectations, it's just all the conversation around Spurs, that shouldn't be the case. And I keep coming back to, obviously, Antonio Conte, one of the best managers in the world, one of the best managers in the Premier League, has had a very solid start to his time at Spurs, and I think has stabilized the club in a way that it desperately needed at that time. But I keep thinking back, and I wonder if you guys remember what my initial thought, go back to last summer when Conte was first linked to Spurs. What did I initially say about, if that were to potentially happen? Did I like it or not? I did not. Like, it was the idea that it just wasn't the right fit tactically and stylistically and everything. And I think we're seeing a little bit of the kind of the butting of heads clashing, just a little bit of the ideas that Conte so values and has to have come the end of the season put in place and implement. I just feel like it's always such a slow burn with him. And it's hard to kind of, I think, readjust for some Spurs fans to what the expectations, what it's going to look like, because this looks very, very different. And it's still good. It's still really, really good. They're in control of every game. They're dominant. They're on top. They're just not doing that last little bit to blow teams away. And so there's going to be some results like this, I think, throughout the whole season until they really get things dialed in.
So I think it's fair to say, obviously, Man City are the clear favourites among the Premier League teams. And then Liverpool, Tottenham and Chelsea, they all have the potential if they get it together throughout the group stages. And probably, I think all three will still make it out into the last 16. Then they have the potential then with the players they have, the quality, the managers they have to go deep in the Champions League. So it's been interesting starts, though, for those 4 teams to kind of wrap our heads around how this group stage is going to play out for them. Looking across the rest of the competition, Nick, who have you been most impressed by? Because 8 of the 32 teams in the group stage are still perfect. There's been some really big wins. Bayern's looking good. Obviously, Real Madrid, again, the reigning champs, are just taking care of business, ruthless. And PSG, Mbappe, Neymar, Messi all on the score sheet for the first time as a trio in the Champions League. That's pretty special as well to watch out for. So some of the giants are flexing their muscles early on, but who's caught your eye?
Well, not so much caught my eye, but the storyline with Sporting and Benfica, who seem to sell outstanding players to the Premier League every year. And we talk about, back in the day it was Saints, and recently it's been Salzburg or Leipzig. And you're like, how is this sustainable? How can they keep finding new positive talent to beat some of the world's best teams? I don't know, but they do. And so that is what's kind of stood out with me as we talk about these teams like Bayern and Liverpool and Man City as favorites, as the teams that adjust and buy the most promising talents in the world. Maybe spare a thought for these teams that just keep finding more promising talents to the point where a guy named Paulinho scores and you have to look up and say, well, which Paulinho is this? Is that the guy who we saw before at Tottenham somehow? It's blowing my mind how good they are at farming out young players.
Yeah, they're really good. And obviously, Benfica and Sporting Lisbon both won their opening games, so they're flying. Club Bruges as well, a team that maybe not many people expected, but they absolutely hammered FC Porto away, beat Leverkusen at home, so they're flying as well. So let's see if some of those smaller teams can sustain their push, but certainly the Giants that we spoke about are looking really good early on. And Andy, a word for the USMNT players from that perspective. Christian Pulisic, struggling to get minutes for Chelsea so far. Weston McKennie had that header against PSG, but Juventus have not started well. Sergino Dest is struggling to get minutes at AC Milan, as we kind of thought he would with that loan move, given Calabria at right back and then Hernandez at left back. So it's been an up and down sort of time for the USMNT stars in the Champions League, especially if you bring James Sands' red card into it. Tillman was good in qualifying, but Rangers may struggle. And then on the flip side, Giovanni Reyna's back, a couple of assists. He's looking good. And Cameron Carter-Vickers is playing a big role for Celtic. And Cohen in goal as well for Maccabi Haifa is looking excellent. And he's been peppered with shots, but he's playing well. So your thoughts generally on these American players in the Champions League? Because even though I've rattled off a lot of names there aren't as many in previous seasons as there has been, right?
Yeah, to me, and I'm glad you got to him eventually there. I was beginning to wonder if you would, but the story is Gio Reyna getting 2 starts in Champions League in a row, obviously being built back up much slower this time around because we've seen recurrence after recurrence after recurrence of those injuries for him. And so I'm very, very happy to see him coming along slowly and back into that team. I know we'll talk about the U.S. men's national team some more this week, but to me, that he is the one player that you mentioned there, aside from Christian Pulisic, I guess, that has a real opportunity to, I think, massively impact the national team at the World Cup this year. And so whatever happens with him between now and the World Cup, I think is the number one story for sure.
Definitely. And over at Pro Soccer Talk and NBCSports.com, we'll keep you updated with all the latest Champions League news throughout the group stage and the rest of the tournament. Been interested to start with some of these giants hammering teams. We've had some ups and downs for the Premier League teams, and Americans are just starting to get going in the competition as well. So we'll keep you updated with all that good stuff from around Europe.
Hi there, I'm Rebecca Lowe, studio host for NBC's coverage of the Premier League. Don't forget to hit subscribe to watch more videos all season long. For even more Premier League content, from original series to live matches, head over to Peacock and be sure to tune in for Premier League mornings every weekend on USA Network and on Peacock. We will see you over there.